Woo, we're live again. Hopefully this works. We'll give it a second for Hoosier Games to try and connect. No, thank you. Please, no. Stop that. Better. It's still just us. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We know we're at least recording. And if they join us, it'll be great. And if they don't join us, it happens. So this is Devs Discuss, where we discuss things about game development and occasionally get interrupted by Facebook bloops. Okay, so Taylor can hear us and see us. I don't think I can hear you. No. Besides the Facebook bloops. And I don't think we can see you.
Chat feature. Oh, there's a viewer.
There's a viewer. And
Sorry. Chat. There we go. There's.
We have a chat. So we're gonna try out the chat. Hello. And then settings. I can invite people. What is a quiet invitation?
It won't ring and interrupt those logged in.
Huh. Well, let's
handy.
do that. I just want to copy this. I don't know if this link will let you join the actual call or not. Or, oh, no, wait, I'm already in the call.
And so you got 3 viewers.
Wow.
All 3 of them.
We are fancy.
We're going viral.
I don't know if this link is different than the one I just sent you, Taylor. But it looks different. It might let you join the call. So we're going to get going. But you're welcome to join us if you can. And we'll see how that goes. This one. Wait. I hear you. I hear us. So.
Echo.
No. But you are very quiet. Let me see if I can figure out what's up with that.
Say more stuff.
Whoa!
There you are.
We have Hoosier Games.
Oh, yeah, you muted him.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can.
All right.
Voice of the sky. Woo!
I've got a couple more people who will probably be joining in, but we'll see.
Your room
Are you
is
in a dark room?
totally dark.
Yeah, sorry, I'm at home. I've got a black tapestry behind me, basically.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna shut your webcam off because.
Oh, I actually already shut it off.
That works actually. Yeah. It pops you up on our screen when you start talking. It's really cool.
Wonderful.
You could just click on us and then it won't do that.
Oh. This is our first time using Google Hangouts.
Yeah, mine too.
Hopefully, if this goes well, though, we'll be using this so that we can put the broadcasts up on our IGDA page afterwards for posterity and such.
Sounds good.
So for the posterity, Again, this is Devs Discuss. We are the game developers group at IUPUI, and joining us is Taylor from Hoosier Games over at IU Bloomington. And tonight we're going to be talking about improving the game development industry, which is obviously a pretty big issue to tackle, and it covers quite a few things. I have no special video to start us off with tonight, mostly because it's been a pretty crazy week. Quite a few of us are getting ready to go to the big game developers conference next week. So after we get back from that, we'll be doing a special talk, just kind of wrapping up what we learned while we're there. But I think we're going to start off with just kind of a review of where the industry is right now, some of the things that scare a lot of people off. And I'm going to move into camera with the rest of my cool, quiet people back here. But, yeah, so one of the things that obviously our industry is kind of known for is crunch time and also big layoffs after projects get finished. It's not unheard of to have 80 or more hours in your work week when you get close to that publishing date. And obviously that puts a lot of stress on people. Not good for your health or time management. You know, you don't really get a free time during that crunch period. And then right afterwards, you're probably going to lose your job. So that's not really a great way to continue running our industry. I definitely want to get people's thoughts on, what are some alternatives to that. I know people have talked about
Unions?
Unions have been brought up because the movie industry had a big problem with this sort of environment for a while.
For like lighting, stages.
Yeah.
Writers, there's a writers union.
So I mean, do we think the games industry should unionize?
Here's the problem with unions, and this is coming from the perspective of my parents who are one of my parents now is a manager. There are good and bad sides to unions. So think of it from an employer standpoint. You have employees who do a really, really good job and will bust their butt to do anything it takes to get the job done. All right? They deserve to have that kind of backing for a union. But you also have the people who are the same union who half-ass everything, who don't put in the same hours, don't put the same work ethic, and they're back with the same union. So my dad's a manager for ABM, and he'll have employees who just, if a manager even blinks at them wrong, if they just take it the wrong way, they go straight to that union, and that union doesn't care if it's true or not. That union will come after the employer and punish the employer.
There was a movie with Sylvester Stallone about unions and how he became like a big union boss. And yeah, you can use unions to extort people. And going more on what she said.
The unions all the unions care about, the people who run the unions, is to extort the employer. The employees may not really see it that way, but if we have unions for everything, a lot of these new businesses aren't going to come up because everyone's going to work for a union and they're going to be afraid to start up.
As potential employees for, in the future, I did work for Kroger for 4 years, and I busted my ass with Kroger, and I was stuck at $8 pay because of the union. So it doesn't just hurt the employer, but it also hurts employees. I work twice as hard as, 100 of the other employees. And they wanted to make me full-time, but they couldn't because there were people who had more seniority than me who were lazy, but they couldn't make me full-time before making them full-time. So, I mean, in my opinion, a union is great for an employee, for a person who doesn't want to work hard, and then they have this backing that they can be lazy and they can jerk off half their time, and they're never going to get in trouble for it because the union's going to back them. And then people who do work their butts off get screwed over in the process.
And it's kind of hard to have overarching rules. I'll take the comedian Bill Burr, for example. He's not allowed to go to specific venues without hiring a specific number of people. Now, if you know anything about Bill Burr, the comedian, he doesn't really require like the multicam setup. So he's basically paying people to just sit down and occupy space. And part of union, like, I don't want to say like legislation, is to make these guidelines and rules that apply in all scenarios. And if we know anything about the gaming industry, a game can be made by 1 to like 1,000 to a couple of thousand people. So to like, you'd really have to look at the dollars and cents and figure out what rules would work for all cases to make those like protecting backbones, and then have those like amendments for smaller companies, bigger companies. And the nature of the beast anyway is it's project based. Luckily, with the Hollywood format, how movies were made whenever unionization was happening, everything was made on the same lot. They had TV shows, musicals, they had everything was on that lot, so they could unionize because that's where the concentrated labor was. Unlike our industry, there are hubs. We'll say like California, Canada, Australia, etc. But there's also like smaller like groups of people. Like the guy who made Binding of Isaac, it was just him and a couple other people, from what I understand.
Yeah, and especially here in the Midwest, we don't have a hub. There aren't, 5 other studios that you can go work at the drop of a hat. We may get to that spot, but we're not there now. So
it is I want to say it is an abusive practice to have crunch time for games, but that just goes for like bad planning.
yeah.
And if
Do you think there's also high expectations to publish on time, and that maybe we're pushing
Yeah,
it?
like
Maybe that deadline is already
Also,
too early.
with the crunch time, like things is always like for like say like a AAA developer, it's always crunch time because you got to crunch for the E3 demo, and then you got to crunch for a playable demo.
And hopefully the teams would reflect that. Like if I knew I had a large number of hours, man hours that I needed,
Just get more people.
yeah, and then distribute. So because like it's not only unhealthy for the employees to do this, but they're also going to make mistakes, which ends up being a subpar product, which we see time and time again. If we took a more lax, laissez-faire, I'd say the current state of Half-Life 3, then you can either have a crunch time and get things done, or things are just in limbo.
Well, the thing is, it really depends on like the studio. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at, I'll say Ubisoft. They've really been terrible about releasing unfinished games this past year. It was like they were torn to shreds over. Whereas you have like CD Projekt Red, which with Witcher and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, we'll release it when it's ready. We just want to make it ready.
I'd
Yes,
rather a
and
game
I
take that for pro.
yes, I'm loving like them.
And I think gamers are very open to that as long as they hear,
Yes.
yeah, it's probably going to take us an extra month.
Yeah, I mean, for example, Star Citizen, which is currently in like kind of an early access development, I was looking forward to like some of the stuff that they're like, we have major issues. We're not pushing this particular build out right now. We're waiting a few days to fix it. There were a few people in the community that were toxic and idiots, but that's always going to happen.
Yeah.
The general consensus was, thank you for not giving us a piece of shit.
I have a couple thoughts on this. I can't say that I'm very familiar with the systems working behind unions. I know that it's radically different in various industries, but just in terms of the rushes, the 80-hour work weeks, and the layoffs. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yeah,
I hear you really well.
Huh. Okay. Somebody's sitting here with me can't hear me. I'll trust that you guys can. One thing that Pixar does that's actually pretty interesting is they have a very solid pre-production cycle that I think is something that the games industry could learn from. Because when you have this huge project, you've got a marketing team that doesn't need to be making advertisements, like launch advertisements anymore. you have a dev team that isn't working on this game, it just shipped, and it'll need patches, but you don't need the whole team. But you can redirect a lot of that workforce into pre-production on the next game or the next several games. And you see this with Pixar. They take writers, they take all of these people doing graphics and basic core animation styles, and then try to get them working on the next problem before it really gets there. And that also helps with crunch time, because by the time it rolls around to actually be crunching on it, you already have a big fleshed out base.
How much of a problem is crunch time to begin with?
Actually, well, I'm gonna mention like with this thing with the like what you do when like like artists, they make the assets, whereas the programmers have to spend a bunch of time up until release putting everything together. Whereas the artists, both like 2D concept or 3D or what have you, are kind of left without something to do. So I know like the current thing right now is to have them do like cosmetic DLC is like one of the things I remember. Like I know Evolved, for example, there's this whole thing about like DLC, like day one stuff, but they were just making like cosmetic skins for the monsters and stuff.
Can I edit?
Yeah.
So my husband works for a company downtown called Vision 3, and he likes to come home and tell me all kinds of things I don't even care to know. So they make games there too. A lot of them are mini games, but they also make bigger games. And I can tell you that the art's not done before the programming starts. Programming starts way before the art does. They put like filler, little like squares
program art,
that's what we program art. They put programmer art in there and start programming to make sure it's functional, because as an artist, that art does not get done like that. Especially depending on the artist, because artists work at various speeds. So the programming starts way before the artists even know what they're supposed to be doing. That's just from what I've been told.
But I definitely think that we could work toward a better system of, if you're already done with crunch time in your spot, instead of laying people off, have them start pre-production on the next cycle. Or have them work on just like a small side project that could be shown off.
That's like with the DLC, like the
whether it's DLC or I know like Quantic Dream, between their big game releases, they'll usually release like a small like animated short that's experimental and trying out something that they want to use in the next game, so that they're testing techniques before they put it into a full game.
Are those the people that did like Heavy Rain?
Heavy Rain
and
Beyond Two Souls, and they always put out little trailers in between.
Like that Robot Girl or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Kara, I believe.
Yeah.
So testing out things that they want to try that otherwise they wouldn't have the time to test out because they're already in crunch time.
And I know Valve, I mean, if you want to make a game, just say, hey, I know you're working on something currently, but you want to work with me on this thing? And they go, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then if it goes well during that pre-production stage, then it gets picked up by the rest of the studio to actually be worked on. Things like that could be a way to use people's times wisely.
And do you think the free market's going to decide, I mean, ultimately what a good game is and what a bad game is?
I think so, for the most part. Obviously, we'll always have our Call of Duties and things of that nature because there's still a market for them. They're not necessarily bad. They're cookie cutter.
Well, it kind of depends on like the games. I mean, like, Call of Duty tends to be a very well-made, but the same game every time. But they tend to be well-made and have a core following that will buy each installment is on release, and they'll buy all the map packs.
Although sometimes they feel like betrayed for some reason.
Yeah, but they always would buy it. So that tends to be something that's very like solid. But whereas I know I'll say like Assassin's Creed, the last one had a terrible rollout and stuff, and there's always the pre-order issue is a huge thing right now.
And even though they have a following, that following has been like, hey, you messed up.
And pre-order. I'm just gonna say pre-order is something that needs to stop.
Yeah,
there's no more
things that need to stop.
Gamer consumers are. Ideally, the free market, you punish the stupid stuff, but we're not doing that. We're just like running like lemmings off of cliffs.
Well, I would use the Wii model. Like, if you go into any EB, or we don't have EB games here. If you go to
GameStop, sorry.
GameStop, I mean, what are most of the titles? Wii game titles, and like they're not sold close to their like MSRP at all. They're sold at like a dollar. So I mean, the free market kind of just decides like what games are good and what's not. Because like if I were to go to Best Buy right now, and I want to buy like last iteration of Smash Brothers, I know it's going to be still close to like its listed price. So I mean,
Yeah, it's interesting to walk into like a disc replay. We've got a few of those in town.
like how many versions of NBA 2K15 are you going to have on your shelf before you go, that's a bad game?
Yeah, like how many of your used games are the same title that people are like,
And you can't discount digital distribution either, because you can go look at physical media, definitely, but you won't be looking at all of the Steam games that go horribly unplayed or all of the Origin games that go unplayed. Before we move entirely away from that free market discussion, though, I do want to say that there are companies, such as EA, that just in their basic philosophy will lay tons of people off so that they can have better sales figures at the end and better revenue models. And it has less to do with them being game developers and more to do with them being just a horrible place to work for. And I think that the free market also needs to step in there and say you're treating your employees horribly.
Like what happens whenever the next Call of Duty appears or the next Assassin's Creed? Nobody wants to touch it. It's just a toxic project.
So then we had someone from Ironclad Studios come in last semester, I believe, and they have a really interesting setup there. They're all freelancers, but they work together to bring in contracts, and they split the work evenly. They split the profits evenly, but they're free to come and go as they please. And I wonder if we had more studios like that, where they can jump onto a project during crunch time to help alleviate the load of some other places, and then once they're done, they can move to another title that's about to hit crunch time.
Or maybe having a core group of people who just jump from crunch time to help alleviate that pressure, while having people who are like doing startup games do like the basic stuff, the programming, the art assets, and then once they get near completion, the overarching, I don't want to say like executive game designers would come in, make sure everything's happening correctly. I'm sure there's some iteration of that in the industry now. I just don't know of it. A lot of it's like insider baseball stuff. Like they don't really tell you too much.
I think it'll come down a lot to where the money is. If you've got a studio that's treating its employees fantastically, but they're systematically pushing out crappy games and they're not making any money, a big company like EA is going to say, oh, well, they're being nice to their employees, but they're making no money. Let's keep being really mean to our employees.
Yeah, but that's not the exception to the rule. Like
It is, very much so. But EA would need to say, oh, hey, look, they're treating their employees great. As a result, their employers are pushing out much better games. They're making tons of money. We need to start treating our employees better.
That's true. And like, I guess if I was employed by a company that was treating employees badly, ultimately I do a thing, I do it very well. I would want my name to be like heralded that even though this game failed, that the thing that I did didn't suck. And that may be like what drives crunch time. And that's just speculation on like what that micro zeitgeist is. So I guess, how do you tell an employee to tell an employer that they're being treated badly without like there being repercussion? Like strikes maybe? Yeah, it's one option.
You can't really strike without a union.
Yeah, I mean you can. And if it's late enough in the project, they're not gonna be able to do too much. Even if they like wash everybody out, inject.
They're gonna do that anyways right now.
Right. I mean, if you think about the guys who did Life of Pi, like they got laid off as soon as the movie was done, and they did an amazing job.
Well, that one was more due to the way the Hollywood industry just was not giving VFX Studios proper compensation. That's what happened to Life of Pi. That's a bit different than gaming studios.
I actually do know someone who worked on Life of Pi. We may be able to get him in on a chat sometime soon to talk about this sort of stuff.
So you're gonna have to get him in.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it is a little bit of a conundrum because we have these crunch times and we want to bring more people on to alleviate, 5 people who have to work 80 hours. Instead, you could have 10 people working 40 hours. But then you can't keep all of those people, which then leads to the layoffs that we don't want also.
We could go to less salary, more hourly positions, because then they would be incentivized not to let us work 80 hours a week.
Yeah,
Is the industry salaried?
for the most part, yeah.
Dude, that's way abusive. That's a legitimate idea. You just punch in, punch out. Although they would have people clocking out as soon as possible. So
Here's the thing with salary positions. You guys work a full-time job, salary, it's a pain in the ass. When Brennan got signed up for salary, I warned him. I was like, the reason they sign up for salary is because you're going to be working overtime, and they're not going to pay you for it. That's the whole reason they offer salary. They give you all those benefits. They offer you insurance.
Yeah.
But the
Top
insurance,
management at Walmart
But-
does too.
you're still paying for some of the insurance. But the perk of them paying, they're paying for a majority of your insurance policy, so they're inclined to say, hey, you can work more hours. So if you sign up for salary, you know damn well you're going to be working overtime. Overtime, the amount varies, but if you ever sign up for salary, you agree to salary position, you can be prepared to work overtime. That's just how it is.
and I guess that's where unionization would come in handy.
I think it also, in some ways, comes down to we are in a system of studios, lots and lots of studios, rather than groupings of people working on games that you're able to move between games freely as you hit different stages of production.
Right, and it's the same way for like the comic book industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a little bit of crossover, but most of the time they want their guys on their field, and then
Because
the
it's
other ones
my
on.
project and I
Yeah.
want to work on my project.
Right, because you don't want like trade secrets being leaked.
Yeah, and that's understandable, but maybe there's a way to like the freelance groups I talked about potentially, where those are people that you work with repeatedly. You know you can trust them, but their goal is they get you to where you need to be, and then they move on to the next studio that they always work with, in a sort of partnership even. And it could be that you have a division within a larger company, say EA or whatever, where, okay, so EA North America is working on this branch, and we have our freelance team working on
Well,
that.
actually, EA's model is more they have a bunch of they own a bunch of studios,
Yeah.
so they have DICE, they got BioWare, they
Yeah.
got a bunch of others and
Do
stuff.
they really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They own DICE and BioWare.
Cheesy, crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They own a lot of them.
yeah, that's what they do. They're EA is a publisher. They're not
Yeah.
a developer. They buy out developer studios and have them publish games for EA.
It's not the other way around.
No.
Like, I want to make a game. Hey, EA, take care of my distribution.
No.
Does
If-
EA
if
provide?
EA
like
buys
that.
the studios.
Interesting. How aggressive is that marketplace? Like, if I made a studio, would
Uh,
a company try to buy me out instantly so I didn't produce anything?
Probably
well,
It's not about you not producing anything. It's
Well,
about you're going to
one of
produce
the
something
big-
that's going to make them a lot of money.
one of the big things is like IPs and owning IPs and stuff. So like BioWare has its IP. I
It's a
mean,
licensing.
yeah, I mean that's like the thing.
Well,
is
that's
IP.
like back in the days of like N64 and such.
Mm-hmm.
When Rare left Nintendo, they couldn't keep making the Banjo games because Nintendo owned the IP, even though Rare was the studio that made the game.
Gotcha.
Um,
I thought they were similar to. I know I'm going to use like a lot of comic book analogies. I thought they were similar to Image, where it's creator owned, and then Image just helps create the physical product, and you use their distribution channels through Diamond to distribute the comic to the world.
No, EA is not that helpful.
like EA currently owns Command and Conquer series. But that was originally created by Westwood, which they bought after 2000.
How?
Like I know they had like Maxis with like the Sim game. Did they also get Sierra? I think.
How are they acquiring all these?
No, Sierra's
companies?
still their own company.
Well,
They buy us.
are
they-
They choose to be bought because they want those distribution.
Well, yeah.
channels.
They buy the money. They buy out the studios. What they do.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
they just signed a check.
They're just like, here you go, I own you now.
Well,
I mean, obviously,
in the
if I
way
own a
that
studio, I have to.
Mojang was bought by Microsoft or things of that nature.
I have to be a publicly traded company for that to happen, right?
No, you
No.
can sign on to your studio.
You can if you offer me enough money, I guess.
It's kind of like
Yeah, that's what happens.
Microsoft in the 90s when they were buying pretty much everybody that made something good.
Yeah, and that's what, like Facebook. They can Facebook like around.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of that's to suppress or like copyright issues or to suppress ideas.
Well, yeah, it's to get IPs and like patents and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Huh.
Although I certainly wonder what would happen if studios chose not to sell out to publishers with bad reputations. Or obviously,
Well,
some of the problem comes in with we like to make games. We're not in the business of selling games, which is why we bring in business people. And business people have a very specific way of working.
the thing is, kind of like the way development's working kind of has been shifting over the past few years has been kind of interesting because you have stuff like like kind of the crowdfunding, early access.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, that's still in kind of an infancy thing where you have like horror stories, developers that just get a bunch of money and then just walk out and stuff. Like, there was something with dinosaurs recently.
No, I don't.
There was some game with dinosaurs.
It was like a first person.
Stomping Land?
I think that's it. But like the developers have just gone dark,
Huh.
and
Or,
it was like 100,000 Kickstarter fund. And it's
That Yogscast project. They were gonna make a Yogscast game, and then
well, that's just using
they
the-
hired a bad studio who wasn't actually qualified to make the game they promised to make.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like it's still an infancy thing. Like right now, the largest crowdfunded effort is Star Citizen, which at last count had like 74 million pledged. I'm a backer and stuff, but it's still in development. They promised so much. They've delivered products that have been pretty high quality for what they have so far. But we don't know how it's actually going to turn out. I'm highly optimistic, but it's stuff like this that I really think Star Citizen is going to be one where it's going to really showcase whether or not Kickstarter, like crowdsourcing, is a viable option. So.
Well, game developers, being treated unfairly and then leaving as a result, kind of revolutionizing, has happened before. The way Activision was founded is a couple of Atari programmers were, being treated awful, and they demanded that they wanted to be paid better, they wanted better rights for what they were doing. Atari said no, so they said, screw you, we're going to go do Activision now. So it's happened before. I guess I don't conceivably, it could happen again.
Yeah, why
I
not?
think you need a huge movement to get it to happen, though, especially now.
Yeah, as EA games are tanking. I mean, obviously, I guess the ones I'm thinking of are like the sports ones. Assassin's Creeds are like extremely buggy because one of the things that we, I guess, agreed upon unilaterally was that crunch time's a bad thing because you have unfinished product, right?
Yeah, well, okay, the thing with the unfinished product thing is also the, timing of release. Like, one of the examples is, like, with AC Unity, you need to get that out the door by Black Friday, otherwise your sales are going to plummet. Because when Mom's out buying video games for Jimmy...
Jimmy has to be 17 or older, so I don't know if
Well, no, when Mommy's buying it, I mean... so it's like, someone goes, you want to get the stuff out by Black Friday. Like Black Friday is the big one because that's opening holiday sales and stuff. And if you get it out late, then you're your sales are going down. So
Not
this
to mention they paired it with the Xbone anyway, so they had that Unity bundle.
Bundle.
Well, yeah, a lot of games have that, so that doesn't.
But I guess what I'm saying is you have to have it out by Black Friday. You have to have it ready for that bundle package. Because if I remember correctly, it was the Xbox One, and then like a couple of weeks later, if not a month later, it was the Unity bundle. I work at Best Buy, and I saw the Unity bundle more than anything last holiday.
Actually, I think Assassin's Creed Unity probably had a bit of a priority issue. Like, they tried to make all of Paris and make it realistic. And Paris is one of the largest cities in the world.
There's
They
also a
also-
little bit of scope.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge scope to start with. Then they also tried to make these huge crowd systems because Paris is one of the most confined cities on the planet. You put those two things together, and you have a huge game that's just not possible.
Hmm.
I mean, you added a year to their production time, they probably still would have had just as many issues.
EA owns Activision.
No,
Activision.
it's Activision Blizzard. They're umbrella company. They're together.
I think Activision owns Blizzard.
It's called Activision Blizzard. I don't know
It's the
exactly.
parent company.
Blizzard
They
and
merged a while ago.
Yeah,
It was a merger.
It's a merge. It's not. So yeah, like, and then Blizzard has its side of stuff, and Activision, like Call of Duty and stuff. So.
You even have was it Guitar Hero?
Actually, who did that? That was. I don't remember.
I think Rock Band is somebody different.
Yeah.
Rock Band's by EA, I think. And then you have Tony Hawk's Skate, and then Tony Hawk's Activision Skate was EA. So they kind of.
They tried to compete with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one thing that might be contributing to this, just the general bad working conditions, is there is a huge influx of people who really want to make it in the games industry. And when you have all of these people who are fresh coming out of college with programming degrees and now degrees in game development, you can pick up these fresh people for way less than you would hire a seasoned developer. You can get rid of them a lot more easily. There's just this huge mass of disposable people throwing themselves onto these spikes because they can't think of a better way.
Would the
I don't know.
in theory be just create your own company? Like there's two philosophies: either work for somebody or work for yourself. And
And also
I guess
because the industry is so centralized right now. We could easily have a games industry here in the Midwest and other places.
Actually, I'm gonna go back to the Star Citizen example. The studio that's making this called Robert Space Industries, or Cloud Imperium Games, which was started by a guy named Chris Roberts who made the Wing Commander games like a while ago. He dropped out of gaming and stuff, and then he's had this game in his mind forever, and now he thinks the way he sees it is the way the market is right now, I can make this game and market it using crowdsourcing. So he made his own studio, hired people and stuff, completely ignoring publishers by going straight to for crowdsourcing.
right. I mean, Pebble's doing the same thing for distribution and stuff. I guess that would be one solution.
It would take somebody who had a lot of eyes on them. Like if the Oatmeal wanted to go start a game development studio for whatever reason, I'm sure they would have no trouble doing it. But if you had some random college student who wanted to do it, they'd need a lot more attention.
Right. And I guess that's where your social media, social marketing, that kind of stuff, your like talk equity would go in. And then depending on like the presentation or the scope of the project, people may be skeptical, but I guess that's just something you got to tackle going in. What would be an advantage with working with a publisher? Distribution maybe?
I do
Legal
that
stuff?
right now. I do that right now. So me and Brendan are in talks with Vision 3, who's going to be, it's called a licensing agreement. It's called a licensing agreement when you do a distribution like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different ways you can do it. If in our case, we already have a game that's complete. It needs minor upgrades, stuff like that, things that me and Brendan are taking care of in-house. All V3 is doing is licensing, which means they're saying, hey, we're going to sign a contract, and you still own all the rights. You own all the artwork, because I did all the artwork. They didn't do any in-house. You do all the artwork, but we're going to have the right to print it and sell it. Now, me and Brendan still own the right to print and sell it ourselves, but we're going through them.
Against yourself?
Huh? No. They're making money for us.
I
mean, they're making. It's a license, so we can still print and sell it ourselves. We're not going to print and sell it ourselves because they're doing that for us, right? So why would we pay out of pocket to print and sell it? So we can just get product from them and sell it if we want to. We can pay what it costs to print and purchase it back from them, or we can go to the same printer they do.
Usually with a certain I've got the same deal with Holon, who published my Reggie and the Rabbit comic.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a 50-50 split on stuff that they sell.
Okay, so that will never happen in the game industry. I'm going to make probably 10% off every box that's sold.
Right, but
so you're not going to have that.
Yeah, the scope is a bit different. It's a 50-50 split for like the print-on-demand stuff. If I were to choose to sell my comic anywhere, I have to get my comic through him. I buy it at cost plus a certain percentage, so he makes something, and then I can price it at whatever price point I want, and then I make that back.
So what happens is, like, and V3 has a game called Strife that they distribute. They have a licensing agreement, and they publish and distribute it. V3 owns all the rights to it, but they pay a royalty up front. They paid, I think, this company $1,000 to get started, and then all the sales after that, I think V3 gets a majority percentage, and they get so much percent for taking the time to sell it.
And this is where you get lawyers involved.
Yeah, or unless you actually know how to read a contract and know what you're getting into, which I recommend everyone does. But as a freelance artist, you have to learn how to make contracts and sign them.
Absolutely.
But me and Brennan, we have a game that's already complete, so we're not going to be out any money.
Right.
It's literally no risk for us if it totally bombs, because we already have a game made. If they lose money, V3 is the one out all the money. They're going to do a Kickstarter. They're going to relaunch Kickstarter with the new product because we're adding stuff to it. Or they're going to do all the marketing and stuff for it. They're putting up all the costs up front. We're just sitting back and watching it go. And that's how it is for some companies. Like, they're going to make the game no matter what. So what risk is it,
Right. And is the game industry a career, or is it project-based?
It depends on the
Current-
company.
That's
currently-
subjective.
And it also depends on like what you're doing. I mean, because if you're a game artist, you can go and work in Hollywood and make like art for like sculpts for movies and models. And like programmers can go and do other work in like say web or just other general software development. It's not like you just have like a game skill set or something typically. I mean, some game designers do, but
So I guess.
I really think it depends. So I would say largely it's project-based. However, one of my favorite studios is Her Interactive. They have a very select publishing schedule. They make one specific type of game. They know how long that game's going to take to play for the most part. They
It's
have a
twice a
system.
year.
It's twice a year.
It's Nancy Drew.
It's Nancy Drew. I love them to death.
They are so weird. They always start with the blah blah of blah blah.
Well, they've got a whole system worked out,
Yeah.
and they have a fan following, and they have a really well set schedule.
Almost like serialized.
It's
gaming.
serialized. They work on one type of game. It's all the Nancy Drew games. They take, between 15 and 20 hours to play usually, unless you're a little kid, and then they'll take you however long it takes you.
Actually, so K9 was playing one. I don't know if you guys know who Sean Plott is. He was playing one, and they looked at the time that it takes to complete the games. 2.5 hours. It took them 14 hours to complete the game. So yeah, they won't take you the time they're supposed to.
Yeah, and so that works really well. Like, you can go there, it's pretty stable. They know what needs to get done and what their production schedule usually is, and it doesn't budge much. And, they're pretty good about when they announce the next title. They're pretty good about when it's actually going to be released, and when it needs to get pushed back, it does, and people are understanding of that. And so there is a balance somewhere in there where if you know what kinds of games you're going to make, it can be a career. But if you're going to be trying a few different experimental things, if you're hopping from this IP to this IP,
or even if you're a starter worker bee, like he was saying, since there's going to be a mass layoff anyway.
yeah.
I think another part of that, sorry, is that we are in an industry that is very rapidly evolving because we're a technology industry. Like in 10 years, it might be Oculus Rift-based systems that are massive, and you won't be able to rely on the models that we have now. And I think that being innovative and being able to work with these new technologies is as big a part of it as knowing what it is that you've done and how long it'll take.
Exactly, and so I think there is room to make it more stable, but generally speaking, we're changing so fast, and most studios aren't like her, where they have a very specific type of product or game they're putting out. So it's going to change from game to game, and it may be more project based. But I think there is room to trim down on some of this crunch and on the number of people that get laid off if we're a little more understanding as consumers, and if business people are more able to trust consumers to be okay with a little bit of wiggle room, which is going to take some time, probably.
How likely is a gamer going to... Well, actually, no, that's a good point. I really don't buy EA titles because mainly they're not interesting to me.
Yeah.
I
I think if we give them quality and a reason to want our titles.
Are we gonna have like free range games and stuff? Or, like, grass-fed games?
That's basically what itch.io is. I mean, there's a massively emerging market for games made by small teams of people who aren't going through publishers. And right now, I think it's vastly underappreciated. I think that if you were to go to the average gamer, they would have no idea what itch.io is. But I think stuff like that is growing, and that it's a fantastic opportunity for smaller developers, and especially for students.
And I think things like Steam Greenlight and things of that nature, where the community is saying, yes, we want these titles and we'll support them, may also kind of revolutionize how at least small games are able to manage their publishing schedule. If you had a place with people who just came together, pitched ideas of games, and as people worked on them and they came to a stage of completion, and then were thrown up onto a voting system, you could see which games people want, and then you focus your energy on that. That could be an interesting freelance model, potentially. Although there's certainly risks where, if too many of your ideas are flops and you're spending too much of your time on it, you may not make back the money that you spent your time on.
And at what point does the output become a torrential downpour? I'm thinking the last 5-6 years, the amount of games that come out per year, specifically like indie games, it seems to like exponentially.
You only ever hear about just a small percentage of some of those titles.
I'm thinking,
and think of the mobile market.
And
there are thousands that they just disappear into nothing.
I've been on Steam since 06 or 07, and I've seen more games pop up in the last like 3 years through the Steam marketplace than I have like just through its entire existence, really. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, how much of that is an individual going to be able to sift through to find the good games?
Yeah.
It depends on how sophisticated your search engine is.
Steam's is awful. Steam is a...
Yeah, if you're looking for something on Steam, you might as well go onto Google and like find it there, and then go find it on Steam.
Yeah.
But I think they're working on it.
We've been bashing on EA for a while, but Origin is actually has a much better service than Steam in a lot of regards, especially like customer service.
Yeah. Aren't there not as many people in the pool?
Yeah, that is one thing, but the thing is a few things EA is doing right. Origin, I know, has a I forget how long, but it's like you have a return period of no questions asked. You get your refund for games.
Yeah, Steam, every transaction's final unless you find it.
Yeah, and customer service in that is absolutely notorious for like completely just screwing you over if you try to get in touch and stuff, and just not really caring.
Like, I bought GTA 4. I've never played it on my computer. Whatever build they uploaded, it's just a buggy build, and it's like a known problem.
So then, I'm feeling the thought slip away as I'm thinking it. I had it. Nope, it's gone. Dang, it will come back.
What other thing that you have on the docket that we were talking about?
I found it. Do you think we may see people who choose to game local if we get to the spot where there are too many games coming out for people to search through on a global scale?
What do you mean by game local?
Like only supporting local studios.
That's not like
I don't really see that.
I don't see that because I mean like the only thing is that really affects whether I buy a game is whether it's like is it the same language? I mean I'm not going to play a game that's only in Japanese even if I want to play it just because I can't overcome a language barrier. But if there are like several Japanese games that have been localized in English. Oh hey, that's cool. I want to play that. So I don't think like local games are really going to affect. I mean, and also we've been like mentioning CD Projekt Red with Witcher. They're Polish. I mean, there's not really any sort of like localization of like local support. You know, I'm like, oh, I want to play this game because my friend made it, but that's kind of.
I know there's a little bit of that going on in like the board game industry. Because I've seen several games just here locally. So Bears is one of them. Was that Bears and a few other ones just come out here. I guess in theory, and that goes back down to like marketing. You're gonna at least know about the games to make the most noise. And I guess for indie developers, it's just getting people to sit down and play those games, which goes back to our early access or your inclusion of including people in the process of the game making, like the Kickstarter campaigns, and then doing those updates. So we're doing textures now, or since we've hit this stretch goal, we'll let you, the community, design a character or something like that.
Citizens stop giving stretch goals because they're like, we can't do any more for you guys.
I think that things like just the early access games are brinking dangerously close to something that we saw happen previously in the industry, where you just saw this huge rush of really crappy games for the console, and it almost just completely killed any kind of major store carrying games. It just almost completely killed it, which ruined the games industry. And I think this was the 80s for like a decade before it was able to recover. And you hear now this huge connotation, oh, it's early access? That just means that it's buggy, it's poorly supported, I'm not going to get an early access game. And I worry that that's going to continue to trend in that direction.
Unless you have a good experience. I mean, Blizzard's new MOBA, I mean, my coworkers won't shut up about it. And they've got early access to it.
Well, Blizzard offers very, very, very high polished quality games. They don't release anything that's not beautifully playable. They have very high production standards.
And some people would debate with you with Diablo 3.
Okay.
When it first came out. But, I mean, I get what you're saying. Usually, they're all about user experience.
Yeah.
They're about balance, and they're definitely about how it's presented and how it's polished. So I guess once we start getting beautiful early access games, then people are going to want to play early access games.
Like, I would say Blizzard MOBA doesn't count as early access because it's a AAA studio allowing... Like, I mean... early access is just kind of the new name for like what's been like beta testing for years before.
Right. Yeah, I don't understand like the alpha, the beta.
Yeah, I mean, I bought
There's
Minecraft in the
some
alpha stage. It was a complete playable game that got updates for years.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I kind of like. Like my StarCraft 2 experience when I first started versus now is it's similar, but there's nuance of difference. Like I can't give you these absurd theory anymore.
Well, that's because StarCraft as a game is all about that has a ton of meta stuff.
Oh, dang.
It's an interesting question though. How many games are too many games? Like if we look at like a few years ago in the comic book industry, sorry, another analogy, but I mean DC axed a bunch of books because they just had too many books on the shelves and people weren't buying it, so they went with their core 52 books, thus the new 52.
I think that I don't think it's an issue of too many games. I think it would be counterproductive for us to argue for fewer choices when it comes to what we want to buy. But I do think that we have gotten exponentially increasing numbers of games without the means to look through them in a meaningful way. It's really hard to go onto Steam and find a game that you think is interesting. You have to trawl through hundreds of games that you're probably not even interested in at all. But I don't know that that means that there are too many.
I think we inadvertently just created like almost like a service, or imagine a company who all they do is just play the new games and tell you if it's good or not, or at least give you like a rating or how far it is.
I'll say one of the things that is like the Gamergate journalism stuff. This is an issue right now. I don't want to go into a Gamergate discussion because that's
a whole other topic.
Yes, I feel like getting into game reviews are game journalism, and that ties into Gamergate, and that's this huge discussion right now. So that's kind of a.
Is journalism not a viable option?
No. Okay. So.
Or, well, without touching, like I'm kind of ignorant whenever it comes to like what Gamergate.
There's stuff. Okay. There's the whole.
So we'll just put that aside.
Yes.
But
Yes. We may touch on that in the future.
what's the harm in like
Delivery?
What? Yep, you found us.
Okay. No problem.
what's the harm in having like a service or a company that just objectively looks at games and tell you if they're good or not? I mean,
okay,
It's a question of whether they can.
Well, it's the issue is not the journalism; it's the ethics. You mentioned objectively. That was the issue that kind of. Okay,
I guess
for
so.
the point of this discussion, I'm going to say that the Gamergate thing is about the journalism, not about like the misogyny and other crap going on. So
It's organized.
yeah, it's not a monolithic structure at all. But, okay, so I kind of am pro Gamergate in like the sense of the journalism stuff and maintaining journalism ethics.
So I know like GamePro during the like late '90s, early 2000s. Whenever you got like a GamePro or a GameFAQs, you just like threw out the reviews because it was just like AAA companies buying reviews.
Yes, that's what happened. I mean, like you always hear the joke about IGN, like IGN ratings. It's because they're going to rate the new COD 9 out of 10. I mean, it's no one treats IGN as a like valid source anymore. But you have
of course they're reviewing AAA. So what if the core of this company was just not to do AAA titles? It was just solely the indie scene, and then exalting whatever's good in the indie scene.
yeah, I mean, I feel like that. I bet someone does that, but the thing is, it's like the objectivity. It's just
And if you're using quantitative words, or sorry, qualitative words like good and bad, I guess like those are subjective as well. So it'd be kind of hard to have your journalistic integrity whenever you're talking about like a thing where you just go around, I don't know, kicking baby heads.
yeah. I mean, it just the game review and journalism is so convoluted with ethics and how open it is. I mean, you go on Steam, you have user reviews that can often shift my opinion of a game. Or you look at the meta score and see like just general how is this game doing.
And I've noticed like a certain slant or certain cynicism. Either the game is the best thing that's ever been created or it's the worst thing. I rarely see a review where something's in the middle. And I don't know if that's something just because our generation, either we love it or we hate it, and we can't be like lukewarm with things, or what. So I read the Steam reviews a lot too, and sometimes like games that are okay are given like shitty scores, just because everyone's saying, oh, since this one thing's bad about it, it's therefore.
Steam does aggregate them as like overwhelmingly positive, mildly positive, mixed, and stuff. So I mean, you can look at that and kind of see, and then you can see the reviews, like what people. You always have the people that are like screwing around, like giving like thumbs up to bad rats and stuff, but. Like people, like you look at the one, like the most helpful ones, and you'll usually find people that are saying, okay, the game did this right, they did XXX, and then they did this wrong.
And of course, that's lumped in the same category as like 420 Dog Boy, who's saying that this game's awesome because you get to like pee on stuff or something.
Yeah, I feel like that's like if you kind of need to know who you're following. So I'm a fan of like Total Biscuit, who is one of the, he's a strong push for journalistic ethics and stuff, and he is very clear on being on like full disclosure on what happened. So like he gave positive reviews to say I know like Planet Side, like some like Sony online games, but he said yes, Sony's having me like market and stuff, and he was clear about that. So so you knew to take it what he says about something in particular with a grain of salt. So.
I would also say when Blockbuster formally closed down, we did get a really large gaping hole that we can't really try games before we buy them.
Yeah, the try before you buy model is kind of dead.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
online I've tried to do it, but they're kind of on life support or closed down.
Well, there's a couple reasons for that, I think. Mostly when Extra Credits has a brilliant episode about why there aren't demos anymore. Mostly it's because demos kill sales figures because you've got a couple of results. One, the demo sucks, and even if your game is great, nobody's going to play it because the demo sucks. Two, the demo is kind of okay, and it's not really going to impact the number of people who play it. Maybe it'll boost it, but like that's one scenario. And then finally, the demo is great, and people are so satisfied with it that they're not going to buy the game because they're fine with the demo. For the most part, when you look at the sales trends, demos don't help.
Yeah, and they take effort to make and all other sorts of things. I mean, like right now, I mean, kind of the way the industry is done, like try before you buy, is always kind of piracy. They'll buy a game, and if they like it, they'll go out and buy it. That's something I often hear people do.
I also, going back a little bit to the journalism thing, but still sort of away from it, Extra Credits has an episode where they talk a lot about how you want to find out which games you might be interested in. And they didn't say it directly, but one of the models that they were really talking about is a lot closer to something like Netflix, where it pays attention to what kinds of things you like and what kinds of things, people who are similar to you, what kinds of things do they like, and brokering recommendations based on that. You can enter in, maybe keywords that'll focus on things you might be interested in, say story, and it'll try to find games that are story heavy based on reviews, so on and so forth. I think that you can get a lot of that specificity in terms of what somebody might like, almost from crowdsourcing, from looking at mass data rather than trying to focus on individual journalists being more fair. Because I think whenever you've got one person representing a huge body, you're going to get distortion.
That's a good point. What company currently would have the onus on that? Like, what comes to mind? Like GameFly?
Hey, what?
GameFly.
What's the question over again?
Not necessarily a regulatory body, but a company that examines users, what they're buying, and then kind of creating metadata on that, saying like, hey, if you want story-based games, try these ones as well. And it's based on the users and not necessarily what like the market tells you to.
Steam does that to it. Like, I know Steam gives
recommendations.
Well, no, users can tag stuff for games.
But what he's saying is just it's inherent in the system.
Yeah.
Something closer to what you see in Netflix. I don't think that there's any game studio that's really that level yet. I think that they could learn a lot from things like Netflix in terms of tracking that metadata and how you're going to use those metrics to determine who wants to buy what. But I don't think that Steam is quite there yet. They're maybe getting there, but I don't know that there's any distributor that's really on that kind of a level.
Steam lately has been, I know over the past couple of years, been focused on their stupid card, like.
Well, that's because this market just does nothing but rake in money for them.
Yeah.
They take like 2% off of everything. And I mean, every time someone makes a thing, they make a few cents.
Or fractions of a few cents. I can see that working for like physical products. I don't know if that would work for. I guess no. It could work for. It could work for digital content. There would just have to be like a review process, or even I guess with Netflix, it's more passive. They're watching market trends instead of interacting with their individual users. Because I don't think I've ever done a like a survey or anything for Netflix.
Have you ever rated movies?
Yeah, I guess I have. So I guess that would that'd be the algorithm.
Just take the fork and then.
Huh.
Well, there's forks kind of like the ice on those. I can grab some forks if we need them. Yeah, Jenny will have a fork. I will grab some forks.
What else do we want to talk about?
I would say our next kind of topic would be how can we improve the industry here in Indy and the Midwest in general.
This is
Honestly, I would lobby to get more tax breaks to set up a video game company here, because that's kind of the advantages of the coastal states. They don't really have those.
and they're closer to like
That's
technology.
what Canada's doing. Like, that's
In Montreal, that's why Ubisoft Montreal exists.
So I guess making a sexy atmosphere for gaming companies to exist. And we're so close to like Chicago. We're so close to New York.
I mean, we're not close to New York.
Yeah, we're not.
We're not close to New York.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna say that.
I mean, we do have a good educational base for a game company.
At a certain level. I don't think our average education level here versus the coast. I think they would have. I'd assume that they'd have a better understanding or grasp of games. That's,
Well, we're
That's the
when
trend.
we're
generally.
when you add in our living costs and the IU and Purdue's computer science departments, we actually do have a very good base.
But are the Purdue students staying here or are they going elsewhere? Because like one of the things I was talking with Matt, like I'm gonna take my degree and I'm gonna go somewhere else. So Indiana's not even gonna benefit from me graduating.
Yeah, it's the chicken or the egg problem. If you need a bunch of developers in one place, preferably local, to start an industry, but you also need an industry there in order for local people to want to stay. I think that, I mean, IU just is kicking off its new media department. I think that that'll see a lot of game developers coming out of it, and I think you might see an industry come out of that, but I don't know, I'm still a little bit skeptical. But I think you need a perfect trifecta of a number of things to really get an industry to start somewhere.
A need, population, and infrastructure.
Sounds about right.
So we have
We don't
the
really-
need.
Well, wait, what do you mean with like the need?
Well, we obviously we want to make games and we want to make games in Indiana, right?
Mhm.
So there's our need. Is there a want? Do people want us to make games here?
I would say IUPUI wants us to make games here.
I think IUPUI just wants students. The
They,
students themselves.
they want students that are working in the field that they graduate in, so that they can.
I could give you guys so much dirt.
But-
It's unreal.
I mean, is there a need? There's a need for the tax money. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a want
Yeah.
for that.
I mean, that as maybe as a school, as a generation of gamers, maybe we can see if we can do that. And like that's kind of disruptive. So we'd have to figure out a way to coexist with our like West Coast brethren. And do you think there'd be like a skills disparity?
Well, okay. Sorry.
I don't think so.
Well, the thing is, here we're more generalist focused, whereas other schools you tend to get much more like extremely like specialist people.
If you're like, well, we'll take our alumni, people who are good at something, they're heralded for going to like Pixar or Disney or somewhere else.
Yeah, like the one person I don't remember his name, but he works at Pixar.
Yeah, I mean even Elspeth. I mean she's she's in Seattle now.
I don't.
League of Legends.
Yeah, so like the people who are good are going elsewhere. So do you
But
think?
that's also because there's no big companies here. There
Right.
are no AAAs in Indiana. There's very few in Chicago.
So if we were to start something, it wouldn't start as a AAA, right?
No.
It would start as something small. So we could we could look at like the gaming companies that are here, like where Brandon works, and maybe try to flood there first before going to the East or West Coast. I know we'd probably get like a better training and like a better hands-on experience. Actually,
Those studios.
I'd almost argue we get a better hands-on experience here since we don't have as much. Over there, you're probably gonna be like what, an intern or something before you actually work on something. You may be like broke for years.
I mean, it kind of depends on where you specialize in. I mean, if you go into game design, you're probably.
But I mean, what's your name? Taylor? Taylor already said there's a mass influx of people. So what's going to make you more sexy than somebody who like graduated from like Berkeley or California U?
I can tell you right now, those companies don't give two shits where you went to school at.
Really?
They just
They care more about what you can.
So
They want to
how?
see your portfolio, they want to see 3 pieces, and then if you don't like you, they don't care. You usually don't take 2 glances at your resume. They only look at your portfolio.
And one thing that kind of makes me nervous about starting something new here is like the talent pool that establishes it, because that's going to be the perception of the Midwest for a while. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like if we have shitty game makers here, we're going to make shitty games, and then everywhere, even if we start making awesome games, we're going to be doing an uphill battle. And like, at what point do we get good enough at making games that the games are actually like good?
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the things I'm trying to tackle with. I know another comic analogy, but like my art in the context of comics, like it's kind of bad in comparison to the low end of like people who work for studios. I'm doing more locally, but that's because I'm not at that level yet, so I'm not like getting poached by anybody.
Well, it's incredibly difficult to start a market somewhere. Like imagine trying to recreate Silicon Valley, where you have all of these tech industries that are being fed into with all of these tech schools. And you can actually look at Brazil trying to do effectively the same thing and failing miserably. And you can look at Sweden and you can see how their games industry is trying to tackle a global market, but they're still very much struggling to figure out how they're going to do it. Every location is going to have to find their own solution tailored to what they have available in terms of how they're going to start a new industry. So if we were going to start a games industry that's massive here in the Midwest, it would probably look radically different than these large industries that get founded elsewhere.
I would say that for us in Indiana, it'd probably be best for us to focus on medical games industry. I mean, it's
Like Surgeon Simulator?
actually, yeah.
I can see your point for that, but then we start brand identity as medical games, right?
And we can always branch out later, but
Yeah, I guess.
having
But
the identity we don't want is almost better than having no identity at all.
I will say
there's some truth to that, yeah.
I will say that although studios really care about your portfolio, I went to Grace Hopper in October last year and talked to a recruiter at EA.
What's the grace?
Grace Hopper is a celebration of women in computing.
It's
Grace
like a
Hopper.
fade hockey, yeah, just
It's a bunch of women who get together. It's a bunch of women who get together and talk geek, and you get to talk to all kinds. It's kind of like a convention, but it's just for women in mechanical engineering, computer programming.
And not necessarily just for women, but focused on women.
There are
So,
some men there.
I went. There were 8,000 people there this year, and only 800 were men. It is largely women's. They even like put signs up on the men's bathrooms and turn them temporarily into women's bathrooms, so women don't have to wait in line. y'all are nasty, but
I would say that girls win. Women's sessions are way worse.
As
No,
a, as a
we're way worse,
janitor,
but-
or as a previous janitor, I can attest to this. They're terrible.
But one of the things I learned when talking to this recruiter, to see if we could get someone from EA to talk, even just like a webcam, like here, they wanted to be able to help, but they do already have specific schools they recruit from. They have that connection made, and it's a very serious connection. And we don't have any alumni working there, so they were hesitant to do something like that with us. So where you go to school does matter a little bit, but there are ways to start making those connections here. Certainly.
We could look at the population of gamers here, figuring out what our core audience is, and then attacking that. It's like, how many medical people
Tractor
are gamers,
Simulator 2015.
right? Like, how many... No, this is,
Have you seen like what Germany does? Like Germany has this huge market for every like type of like civic work simulator you can imagine. I'm not even.
They
kidding.
do.
like,
That's the way
it's a
of
legitimate
training
question.
people.
Like, what games does Indiana buy?
I don't know that it's really that meaningful to look at a local market. I think it's I mean, maybe it is, but I think what I would be doing is focusing on local resources and tackling a global market. I mean, if you're going to try to focus on selling games specifically to Indiana, that's great, and you'll have a very specific target. But you also don't have a very large population, and there's not a lot of room for making revenue. You're going to want to be looking at who do we have, what resources can we leverage, and how can we sell that to all of the U.S., if not more, which is where digital distribution comes in.
And I know that there have been companies who are located primarily on the coast that are now looking at the Midwest because we're a little bit cheaper as far as costs of running a studio go. And we do have quite a few schools now in the area that are teaching people game design and programming. And there's also a large number, for the Midwest, number of conventions popping up now, and conferences and summits and workshops for people like us who want to make games in the Midwest. So I recently went to the Ohio Game Developers Expo back in October. Fairly small, but they had people who previously worked out in studios on the coast who wanted to work back here in the Midwest, so they got a big enough reputation to be able to work remotely. And then, in addition to the Ohio Expo, there's the Midwest Game Developer Summit up in Wisconsin, and there's Dev Expo here in Indy, and I believe Sigma Play was in Bloomington last year, and they're a little bit quiet, but they might be there this year.
They are.
From what I know, you went last year, didn't you? And there's the Chicago Law Summit coming up next month also. I think it's like the third weekend in March. So there are these small expos, but I don't think we're going to see the industry really start to boom here, although I do believe it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see that happen until we have a more centralized networking opportunity here, whether it be a Midwest conference that's pulling people from all of these states to one location,
Hey,
or
we're
something.
called the Crossroads of America. So
We are the crossroads of
you
America.
could utilize that.
What stop people once they're coming through.
Yeah.
Stop
hey,
people. Hey,
come take a look at
come
my
play
game
this
stuff
game.
real quick.
Hey, you, come play this game.
And you're right. I mean, we don't really make too much noise here. So if you start making more noise or start forming clubs.
If you can say we had, X thousand number of developers in one location.
And who's to say somebody here hasn't tried this very thing? So we could learn from people who exist now or no longer exist to know what they did and what not to do.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason people are taking their degrees elsewhere is just because there's nothing here. So if they gave somebody something locally that they could try out and use for a little bit, and then if they're super passionate, can go out to California or wherever.
Yeah.
Maybe this could be like a resume builder
A resume builder, or we could start a freelancing group here where we all pool together, we get contracts, we work on them and build a name of there's people here in the Midwest who are working on your stuff. You could bring your whole studio here. That could be something.
Honestly, I would say the best thing that could happen would be that as many people get the fuck out of here as possible, so that the Midwest can get a name for themselves in the AAA world. Like if we have somebody working at EA, they're more willing to come.
Do you think?
So leave for a few years, get
Even
that
if
experience,
leaving-
and then come back.
Yeah. That may be
for
one
a few
option.
years is actually would be good, because if we all start up a studio here right now, right out of college,
We don't
We
really
don't
know what it's
know
like
the
to be
industry
in
we
a
don't.
Do you
studio.
guys watch The Office?
Not much.
There was a season where Steve Carell made his own paper company since he'd been working at Dunder Mifflin for so long. You're essentially describing that.
How'd that go for him?
I mean,
It's a comedy. How do you think it went?
he disrupted the supply chain and stuff for Dunder Mifflin so much that he got bought out for a large sum of money and got his own job back and got a couple other people hired at a better position. So I mean, they used it as leverage.
So I think there are things we can do, whether it be leaving for a few years, getting experience and building a reputation of being people coming from the Midwest to make games and being good at what we do, and then potentially coming back, starting a couple studios.
I think we may need to, like you said, reach out to people who do it already to kind of teach us, because we don't have that skill set to that degree yet. Because I mean, we're walking out of here knowing how to like do stuff in Unreal or a little bit in Unity, but I mean, we know nothing about like creating our own engines and stuff.
Sorry to step in. It's 8 o'clock and I've got to get going, but this has been a very interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Definitely, we'll be doing our next one in 2 weeks, talking about everything we're going to see at GDC. We'll hope.
All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you guys then.
What was I saying?
Yeah.
What were you saying?
So I would say one really good example of a studio that's doing very well in the Midwest is Deep Silver Volition. You used to be THQ Volition.
Huh. They made
Saints Row.
Yeah.
And
They exist here?
they are located in Champaign, Illinois, which is like where the U of IUC is. They have a small community college there, which is where I went before here, that has a very strong,
Jeez.
very strong 3D modeling program there. But they don't do games, like they don't do Unity or anything there right now. They don't have enough staff for it really, and they do some programming there, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't merged the way that our program is, at least.
And we don't really have time to like train in the mountains.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, we need to pay bills, and so how could we as students, we as graduates, I guess, stay united in this cause to create video games or to develop a creative atmosphere?
So I think a few things need to happen. Certainly we all need to stay in touch with one another and support each other the best we can. So say I'm working at Studio X, and Studio X has a programming position open, and I know person Y who's good at that, like works with those languages, is good at what they do. So I reach out to them, I give them the recommendation and pull them in. And doing that sort of thing for people in this room and in our classes.
Do you think we have enough people with drive to actually like create something just with us?
I think we're at a tipping point right now for something like that. But I think a lot of those people with drive are also the people
We're
who
going elsewhere.
who believe they need to go elsewhere for at least 5 years and then come back, which is certainly not a bad thing. But that's why making those connections and kind of making that little promise to each other, hey, we're going to come back in 5 years and start a studio.
I wonder
Or
what the alumni from 5 years ago are doing right now.
that's a good question. We should be reaching out to our alumni and seeing who are our biggest alumni. I don't really know.
I don't know either.
Um,
We're kind of like a commuter
Yeah.
school, but
Someone that works over in Blizzard.
We
That
do.
does
I know we
sound.
have someone at Blizzard, and I think that's the biggest I've heard
To
so
quote?
far.
Yeah, stick clear.
Like
on
Johnson's
Facebook.
also about to go over to Blizzard.
is she really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
I've heard
she-
from a few people.
Yeah, Zeb says she's like just got like big time notice by some people there.
Nice. So I guess we'll talk to her in 5 years.
Who?
Kelly Johnson.
You're shitting.
Right?
She's really applied herself to her work. I think she's got a lot of drive, and she knows how to make connections at least and maintain them in her own way.
It's
But
cool.
I think that maybe we are the generation that comes back in 5 years. I don't know if there was a generation before us that really had that drive or not, because I don't hear those names very
I
often.
think the gaming part of this debate is someone
Is someone new?
I mean, I don't think we have alumni from 5 years ago to actually go and ask.
I wonder if, I don't know, is there a way to like combine resources or say you go there and learn stuff, we'll start the infrastructure here, we'll meet back in a couple of years. Break.
Potentially, and I think groups like this, I think this group could be the basis for that, where we start building a name, where
Well, yeah.
maybe our alumni, us, start working with whatever GDG looks like in a year or two, working with them to on our side time build a game with some of those people, give them some of our experience and mentor them from where we're at in 2 years or so.
I mean, just the act of making a game, you learn a lot. So I mean,
Yeah.
just sharing experiences.
I think even if we went out and over the next 5 years of ideally all of us having industry jobs, we also take just a little bit of our side time to work on a game together and start building those bonds. And it may take time, but at least we're getting paid on another job.
Yeah.
And we're not worried about that financial side of things. And if that gets to a point that it looks good, we pour more time into that one. Or if it's not looking good, we go to the next idea.
I came up with this idea last semester, essentially kind of like a Craigslist posting or help wanted board for people with capstones. So I think that might apply for stuff here. Like, what if we created like a dossier of all the people, not necessarily in this group, but all the people who want to be involved. I don't know, create like a LinkedIn group or something,
Yeah.
and basically say, hey, I am an X, I need a Y, and then use that as like a pairing tool. He's like, I'm really good with like stories. I'm good with like dialogue and character stuff, but whenever it comes to actually programming game, I don't know. That's the elbows.
I mean, that could be it, potentially. I think
I've worked with a group pretty much through October, and they were pretty much scattered throughout the planet. Like, there were some people in Ukraine, a guy in Los Angeles, a guy from Canada.
Haven't you done something similar to that? You're working with a guy from somewhere who wanted you to draw stuff in weird ways, if I remember correctly. It was like last year.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy who was telling you to draw a character kind of like, I forget what he said, but you had no idea what he was talking about. And you had to like contact him a lot. I remember right.
That's like every client. That's like Pathfinder shit right there.
Yeah.
Like they give you a Pathfinder live, you give it three sentences per character to draw. Constantly contact me like, what the fuck does this mean? I am paying attention, I swear.
So what about? I know infrastructure is a big thing here, right?
Yeah.
What if we just created a dossier? We went to capstones and started poaching students. We basically got a bunch of projects made on spec that got to the point where, I mean, it was good enough to sell on like a Steam market, with the idea of coming together and making a studio.
I mean, that would say that, not a half bad idea. I mean, like kid over there is Savant programmer. You know,
Ian and Andrew should hang out. It's all he talks about is just like Laravel and Ruby on Rails.
him and Luke should hang out.
We need to place the camera over here next time.
Yeah.
See all the back of your heads.
Sorry, this is pure talk time.
I think,
Real talk.
is it just us?
It is just us now, yeah.
But I mean, in the future.
We're recording.
Yeah.
I
think we're.
Find out later.
We'll find out now.
I'm trying to do something similar with comic books. I was talking to Tiffany last night. I had the idea of creating like a comic book club here, but then I realized, oh yeah, I'm graduating in like a couple of months, so I can't really do it here. But I can definitely use this as like a poaching ground or for advertisement. Tiffany mentioned like using actual like the infrastructure of comic book places here and just using the back room maybe once or twice a week. But I mean, I want to teach, or I want to like help people get better at comics. And I want, in turn, me to get better at comics by doing so. And I think one way to do that is just to do whatever your craft is constantly. Just breathe it, eat it, and live it.
Do you live near the Greenwood area?
I don't, but I mean, I've got a car.
Comic Books University has.
Oh yeah, I've been there. They've got those two back rooms. Those
Yeah,
looks like a
they've got
library.
back rooms. They have like I think like Sunday night they have like Pokemon tournaments and shit. So you could definitely talk to them about utilizing their space. And if it's for comic books, I'm sure that they'd be more than happy to work with you. The people who own it are really nice. So.
And I was thinking about like getting people I know that do comic books, as I guess speakers.
Mm-hmm.
We would like go over the whole process of like creation, from idea to page to web page kind of thing, over X amount of meetings, and then it would be open to everybody, and then there would be like sub meetings where you can like critique people's works. So that way you have your space to learn and then your space to critique.
Yep. And things like this aren't limited to just comic books. So I mean, it's that whole thing of we want to bring things to this area while sitting and talking about it ain't gonna do anything. We actually have to do it. We have to make people want to come here. We have to shout and scream and yell as much as we can so people will hear us and say, hey, there's something happening there.
Yeah, because I mean, if we don't make any noise, someone's gonna know about us.
Which is why you should follow us on Twitter. Indeed, IGDA.
And I think having the MAS program going into Gen Con and stuff. I'm sorry, not Gen Con, other cons.
Local cons.
It's super
Comic-Con.
important because I mean that tells the average person
Con.
coming from like Ohio or Michigan or like that there's stuff going on here,
Yeah,
and it's pretty cool stuff.
it's cooler than whatever's happening in Columbus.
I just want to know.
Oh.
Columbus.
I just want to know if businesses here would want
Ohio
that to happen.
Developer Association.
Oh, is that the one that you guys would do?
How receptive do you think like local businesses would be? Because like we've got a bunch of abandoned like warehouse places that could essentially be utilized as studio space.
I think that's more of a problem that Indy has is we do have a lot of abandoned buildings that could be renovated into community spaces.
Mhm.
One of the really cool things we do have here in the Indy area is Launch Fishers, which is kind of a co-working space where and a startup
They've got
space.
the bureau in where the heck that place is. Where you just basically like rent space
Yeah,
as a startup company.
There's Travis also mentioned the Speakeasy. Is also a co-working space where people just
you pay a monthly due or a yearly due, and you can go in and work and talk with other people about what you're working on, and it may not all be related, but
Yeah,
Yeah, but
maybe
if
we'll
you're wanting to start a studio or something, and let's say you don't know the business side of things, you can go down to the Kelly School of Business and you can talk to the students there, maybe find somebody, or you can go
Or
to
even the
places
law
like
people.
Speakeasy
Like they've got
or Launch Fishers or the law people. There are resources. So you don't know how to run a business, that's fine. There are people out there who do and they want to. And you can find those people at the law building, at Kelly School of Business. You can go to Launch Fishers, you can go to Speakeasy, and you will find people there. And that one person you talk to might not be the person who's going to end up working with you. They might say, hey, I'm too busy, but I know this guy who does great work.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
I've met some really interesting people through my work with the undergraduate student government. One of the people I met, Danny Woolsey, she is like a business major. She loves games. She actually runs the fandom club here. And
so they go like running like grants.
no, that's Allison. But she likes the business side of things and loves games and wants to, help with the business side of running a game studio. And I met a guy who interned at the State House a year ago and really loves games and wants to do lobbying to get more game studios here. So there's people here now.
Lobbyists.
We've got lobbyists and business
a legal
people
team. We've
and
got
legal
potential
team.
spaces.
We have the resources here.
I mean, you don't have to limit your scope of people to those who have taken the MAS program or those who are specifically into game design.
Right. But
Jennifer
obviously-
King, up on the 4th floor, secretary.
She's an art history major.
She's
but
art history, but she is
loves
fantastic.
games.
She loves games. She's fantastic with research. She's fantastic with writing. So, I mean,
And that may be where having that dossier space would be beneficial.
Well, even at our first meeting, and I don't think you were here at the first one, but we had Lacey Smothers here. She's a psychology major, but you need those kinds of people. You need historians if you want to work on a game with a historical background. So we shouldn't limit ourselves to just people who make games as their living, but also the people that fringe. They fringe on our space.
Like, do you have like a film school here?
There is
There's
a
film
film
classes.
There's film classes,
I know
and
Shandy
there
and Ottawa
is,
would love to do anything.
you know,
I think the film
MacGuffin
degree is
Media.
done in Bloomington. I don't think they offer the degree here, but there's definitely a film track.
Hey,
And-
going back to Flashpoint, essentially the closest thing we have to wholesale, they're up in Chicago. But they may not be that religious school.
And we don't necessarily have to limit ourselves to just this school if we want to benefit the Midwest industry as a whole.
Yeah, but we have
You know,
to.
but we do have to think about our school and
it's
building that name and the starting point. And that's why we have people like Taylor from the Bloomington campus who come in and talk on these chats.
Not just that, but like you came from Parkland, right?
I came from Parkland.
There's people over there.
And we're getting more of them coming here because they're just a 2-year program and they need more, but
I guess transparency in the whole process would make it sexier for people to join on.
yeah.
And then potential employers could use our dossier as.
And that's why we're even recording some of this is because, that way people can see there are people here. We have thoughts, we have contributions to the industry, even though we're just students, because we're not going to always be students.
Exactly. We're doing what we can now to get involved.
It only gets better
This is our industry, so we're
when
going to
you
make
get
our
better. I don't think we can end this with anything better than that fortune cookie.
No,
But
that was awesome.
I think we'll wrap it up there, although there's certainly much more we can talk about. But
Do we hit all our points?
I think we've hit most of our points so far. I think this is an ongoing conversation, though. Like Taylor said, this industry is rapidly changing, whether it be,
augmented reality and virtual reality coming in, or
It's not just that, but the public view of the game
the
industry
public
is changing
view is
drastically.
changing,
And
for better
corporations,
or
like,
for worse.
I would say like I'm talking like the artistic thing. So like
Yeah,
the work that game company has done has significantly altered a very large portion of the public view of the game industry and is starting to make more people accept games as art.
yes.
As
I
an
would
art
say
form.
the level of craft involved in games nowadays just eclipses what the earlier iterations was. Even like maybe a couple of years ago. Seems like
Yeah.
the scope of games is getting larger and larger because you have to have that online multiplayer aspect. In some games that like make or breaks your title.
You know, 10 years ago, if you had a game console, you were the cool kid on the block. You were also the geek. And now it's like
Yeah,
pretty much
three.
any person you talk to has multiple consoles and they play all day, every day.
Yeah.
A good chunk.
Until we get jobs.
Yeah, and they were too busy working.
High school students.
Yeah.
That's all they do.
Future. But this has been Deb's Discuss. I'm gonna look right at the camera, make them real awkward. Yeah. I want to thank you guys for coming in. Like I said, we're gonna hold our next one in 2 weeks after we get back from GDC. Those of us who are going, and we're gonna do a kind of a post-con wrap up on every cool thing that we've seen and the neat things we've learned there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are gonna be gone next week, right?
We're gonna be gone next week.
That means no cast. too.
Yes.
No gas. No no
That-
nothing.
That means if I mention my wine and dine thing for this publisher, I'm gonna do it next week. No one's gonna be there.
No one. Well,
We're all taking
the
Friday
freshmen
off.
will be there. All right. Peace.